we want to a story that we want to keep going. We want to be able to make more episodes of this particular story. So I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to let you guys watch this. This is A Wilderness Like Eden, Stories of the Christian Food Movement. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Googling things on the internet to try to figure out, well, where are the Christians who have made the connection between the fact that the central practice of our faith is Holy Communion and the fact that we also eat every day. And when we eat, we are, as Wendell Berry says, breaking the body and shedding the blood of God's creation. And so how can we shift our faith practice and our understandings of where we fit in a food system in accordance with that? There have got to be other Christians that are doing this work. Where are they?
And it just started as me trying to do something to support the members of our congregation who I noticed through hospital visits were having diet-related challenges. And so that's how it started. It was just a pastor trying to help beyond prayer and scripture. Once we had that garden, they crossed the street. They were giving tools and donations to support. And then I saw the way it animated the elders in our congregation, many of them that grew up down south on farms with 10 brothers and sisters. And I said, wait a minute, a lot of these basic ingredients I find as well in other churches.
Then it became home to many African Americans who had left the South seeking a new journey. So this was part of Milwaukee's Bronzeville. It is a space of magic and beauty and cultivating a lot of community and families as we cultivate food.
And so the what if started rolling, and I started trying to swim upstream, right? Because you can only keep on giving free food, for so long until it's like, okay, wait a minute. Yeah. There's a hole in the bottom of the bucket. Yeah. And so I wanted to have something more in the way of a systemic response to what I see as a systemic challenge around food insecurity and food apartheid.
COVID coming. Yeah. Oh, geez, COVID coming. So,
both Canada and the United States will temporarily restrict
this astounding and unprecedented story.
Concerns of a global pandemic are spreading.
We've been making plans. We were ready to go mid-March, and then all of a sudden,
pre-COVID, we're advancing our work at our church, but also working with other congregations around Baltimore.
So as we, as a nation, began to move into stay-at-home orders, it was the same time that we, as a community urban farm, and myself as an herb farmer, began to move into the logistics of the growing season.
We're a working farm, and food is grown here throughout the Michigan growing season.
Because of concerns around, in infecting one another, we had to relocate very, very quickly, have to start a garden from scratch in the middle of growing season when there was a bunch of stuff we already wanted in.
I think one of the things that's become visible to us through this pandemic is the brokenness at the heart of our society, the brokenness of displacement and violence that is part of the legacy of empire and colonialism. As that becomes more visible, it also heightens the hunger for a healing practice of Christian faith.
All of those things that we had been creating and offering to the community all along became an essential, they became essential items, especially for essential workers.
there were relationships around the county that I had people who do community gardening or people who teach environmental science called me up and said, hey, listen, we know that food insecurity is going to be a huge issue on the backside of COVID. As things begin to develop, as folks begin to lose their job, food security is going to become a huge issue. And so can we combine together to figure out a way to increase the amount of locally grown food that we can then put into our food system? We reached out to every farmer and gardener that we could get a hold of and said, we want to build a coalition that is going to try to support our neighbors with fresh produce.
Now in COVID, the Black Church Food Security Network is working with congregations and denominations to establish food systems and engaging their food environment in a way beyond charity. What COVID has done and the projections that people are making in terms of how long this is going to be around.
As people began to understand that foodstuffs may not, and at that point were not as readily available, they began to project out.
It's clicking for a lot of people now that, hey, wait a minute, we can't do this soup kitchen or this emergency food thing forever. What's the long game here?
Herbs as food and medicine became real. Became extremely real.
Keep and Till is part of now a larger network of gardens, some of which are here in this larger garden plot that we're working, who are working together and trying to coordinate our efforts to bring as many farmers and gardeners together. And so COVID created a lot of problems for us in that we had to reimagine our gardening very, very quickly. But at the same time, it also inspired a lot of people because we're all recognizing the needs that were always present, but now have kind of risen to the surface.
And so in the midst of literal illness and death and horror that we are experiencing in the midst of this pandemic, it isn't the end of God's world and it isn't the end of God's work, and we have the opportunity to be part of the work that God is doing in this time.
We have felt essential in what it has meant to be able to offer the community things that have always been at their fingertips, but it became real. So I like to say that our work did not change, it just was magnified. It increased the respect for the work and what we offer shifted. I've
never believed that produce and locally grown food should be limited to an economic class. It should be available to everyone. And so at a time when so many folks were going to have a hard time getting access to food, can we increase the amount of food that we're producing so that our people are fed?
Yeah, I think a lot of grace is required. I think people got to give themselves grace and those around them a whole lot of grace. We've stopped apologizing on Zoom meetings now for our children coming into the shot, because we recognize, hey, listen, this is what it is. If you need a moment, go off screen, go get some water, come back. So I think for me, I'm loving the ways in which grace is being extended, and I want to see that continue. I'm seeing hope there.
So our labyrinth, which was always open, we have an incredible spiritual caretaker here. Her name is Sherry Johnson, and she has always offered guided labyrinth walks, and we do reading circles and book circles. In this moment, every other week, I have created a walk of whiteness, a labyrinth walk for people of white to come and unpack all of that in this, what does it mean? The pandemic, in the midst of the tragedies of the loss of life, because everyone was a bit more still than they normally had been, you had to pay attention. So again, in the midst of pandemic, in the midst of murder, there is opportunity for reflection and for growth. So I hope we never go back to what we deemed as normal. Anybody who's trying to go back to normalcy, I'm deeply concerned about their well-being.
A farmer friend of mine said recently, he was like, Heber, we don't grow food. We just plant the seed. The seed knows what to do. And so that really just gave me a reorientation to this to say, listen, we are in the midst of an ancient and wise teacher that has been here When I go to the trees in my backyard or look at these trees around us here now, these trees have seen troubling days. They've seen sunshine. They survived us. And they are still standing as our ancient elders. I feel like it's time to blow up whatever ideas of normal we had. I don't want to go back there. Why rush back to a normal that on a personal level, so many people were burned out, tired, stressed out?
Normal was never correct. Normal was never righteous. Normal was never about equity and that abundant life that Jesus spoke of for everyone. I've come that everyone can have life and have it abundantly.
We can open the economy, but the virus isn't going to go away. And so suddenly something else is centered in our lives, and it's forcing us to realize that we're actually much smaller creatures, and that's a good thing. We're actually a part of our environments. We actually have to respond to the realities in our environment. And so my hope is that we will learn to center things other than ourselves. And in doing that, the better world will start to emerge.
Keep on saying, I need to spend more time with my family, but you never made time to do it. Your calendar stayed packed. The invitations kept rolling. Why would anybody want to rush back to that? Like, if this is an opportunity where the machine is down and we can make a run for it, let's make a run for it. Let's begin to dream new dreams and have new visions and have courage to experiment and have some experimental alternatives to the lives that we were forced to leave, and prayerfully come out of this with a more whole, balanced, healthy, and loving life.
It'll be a more just world. It'll be a cleaner world. It'll be a world where we're much more willing to live in partnership, because all of a sudden we're discovering how much we miss one another and how much we need one another.
People are saying things like, how are you? And they mean it. They're waiting for a response. How's your family? And people mean it more. I don't want to rush back to a normal that was numb to that on the interpersonal level, or a normal that was complacent with the injustice and with the discrimination. And I mean, I'm not rushing back to that. And so if this is the time for us to see a new heaven and a new earth, let's rock out. Let's try it. What we have to lose?
We would not have preferred to have this virus and to have this pandemic, but there's so much opportunity in this moment. And if you understand the opportunity in the moment, you can transform the moment into something that is life-giving and not just life-taking.
COVID is going to bring about a better world because we're centering something else, and that is the first step towards justice.
Plainsong Farm really grows out of the sense of importance that we rediscover a more harmonious existence with the rest of creation.
To be able to have this open space. So when I'm doing spiritual direction, it's not on Zoom. It's in our herbal labyrinth. It's at this table. It's within the midst of this beautiful creation that offers healing in so many ways. And this pandemic has helped us, if you choose to take the journey, to redefine abundance, to redefine normalcy, but more importantly, to do some inner reflection of who am I, not just in this moment, but on this planet, and who am I supposed to be?
There's a woman who has been around. She's a beautiful and wonderful violin player. Struggles with some autoimmune concerns, to the point where physically getting around becomes much more of a challenge for her. She forced us to think differently, think outside of our ableist kind of ways of thinking. Even though she's not been able to be out, every single post we put up gets shared. Everything we do, she's commenting. And so she's constantly speaking back to us about the importance of this work. Forget us ministering to somebody. I think the church is really, really powerful when it unlocks the abilities of others to do that ministering in ways that we could not have seen before.
There have got to be other Christians that are doing this work. Where are they? And they were very hard to find. And I thought I might be the only one. I had never had a response to anything like I had a response to this set of links to the Christian food movement. When I put it out into the world, more contacted me and said, I thought I was alone, or did you know about this too? And that's when I realized there was something much bigger that we were all part of, that, I didn't start, that God started when Christ said that his last, in his last act of ministry was feeding people.
Another world is not only possible, she is on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. She is on her way. Another world is not only possible, but she is on her way. On a quiet shore, I can hear her breathing. Another is on her shore.
So, first and foremost, I want to thank the, ooh, something's making noise. I don't know what that is. Hold on. I know what it is now. All right. Sorry about that. So professional. First off, I just want to take some time I want to take a quick moment to thank just the wonderful collaborators. And that's what this really was. This was a collaborative process. Jason Chestnut, our filmmaker, as you all can tell, is an incredibly talented man. Anna Woofenden, Sam Chamberlain, Nuria Love Parrish, Alan Breimer, Wilson Dickinson. We, for 2 years, met together almost every other week to discuss this film. And I'm so grateful that it exists in the world. We're making this film widely available. You can go to ankosfilms.com and it will be on the page ankosfilms.com, and you can share the film widely. We'd love to be able to continue telling this story. So if you're interested in helping us to continue to tell the story, you can go to patreon.com/foodandfaith. And that will, any small contribution you can make to this project will be appreciated. And then one last plug, and I'll be done. We are just starting foodandfaith.org. This is the beginning. This is the first project of the Food and Faith Storytelling Collective, which is going to include the Food and Faith podcast, hopefully more films, articles, things like that. Foodandfaith.org will launch on August 1st, and you'll be able to go to foodandfaith.org and learn more about what we're doing there. And the Twitter and Instagram at Food Faith Story. Those will both be live in the next couple days. So I threw all of this stuff at you. I'm so grateful. We all know the power that media has, and we believe that these stories are worth telling. We do it through the podcast every week. We do it, we want to now do it through this new medium. There's a movement happening in the United States, and based off of what I've seen in the last couple of days, it's in the UK as well, of people of faith who are putting their resources together to fight climate change, to create local food systems, to really push back against the way that things are. And we want to connect those people, and we want to encourage other people to be a part of this work. So that's what we're hoping to do with foodandfaith.org, the Food and Faith Storytelling Collective, and all of the work that we're doing.
Thanks so much, Derrick, and everyone who worked so hard on that video. I think we'll definitely share that out and get lots of views on it. It's just so good. I think it's interesting the turning that you were saying that had to happen around COVID. I found, as someone who's American living in the UK, it was the first time that I felt unified really with my family. So I've got parents that live in Phoenix and a brother and sister-in-law that live with their kids in San Francisco. And all of a sudden we were talking the same language. And it was so interesting. I realized in a really negative way, it kind of unified us. And in some ways, I think this is happening with climate emergency as well, is that there's a language we all need to be able to speak together, because this is going to affect all of us, no matter where we are at. And so I love that you guys are doing that through telling stories, both visually and through podcasts and things. Can you tell me, just any of you really who's on the team, tell me a little bit more about your journey of discovering kind of storytelling as a powerful tool to get the message out of growing?
Yeah, I mean, I was a film studies major, and so that was my undergrad work, and so I've always kind of known the power of film. I've kind of always known the power of storytelling. And Anna, who is on here, she's written a wonderful book. This is God's Table, where she also shares stories. Hers is one of the churches that we also want to tell stories about. The one she started, Garden Church. So, you know, she's been a great storyteller in her own right. Of course, Jason, as a filmmaker. So if either of you want to chime in on that question, go ahead, and or anyone else who's a part of the group, feel free to chime in.
Anna, that's you. Anna, you're the storyteller.
Oh, it's a team effort, my friend. It's a team effort. Well, I think, you know, so having been a co-host of and the co-founder of Food and Faith podcast for the last 3 years, what the impetus for this podcast was that I kept finding myself just really lucky to be in these rooms where all these amazing stories were being told. And I was just so aware of both the privilege and the it just wasn't enough. Like, we couldn't all be in the same rooms together. Like, there needed to be more than, I mean, I love, don't get me wrong, especially right now, like in-person gatherings, amazing, right? But there needed to be so much more in terms of the connective tissue to be able to share the stories, and to share this, to have people have access to the stories of the, you know, the big name stories, but even more importantly, to be able to find the person who isn't going to be a speaker at a conference yet, and who doesn't have a book out yet, and, you know, and find those stories and to share them more broadly. So I really felt like the documentary was an outpouring of that same impetus of there are just so many powerful things happening around the globe at this intersection of food and faith. And I know for me that, you know, Naria spoke to this a bit in the documentary, of that at first it felt kind of lonely. And it was like, has anyone ever done this before? And finding out, like, not only are people doing it all over the place, but like all these different expressions of creativity at the intersection of food and faith are happening. And the possibility for collaboration and inspiration is so great. And so my hope for all of the work of Stories of Food and Faith is that by sharing story, we are shaping culture, and we're shaping the future story. We're shaping that, you know, that the quote that we used in the song that Anna Hernandez's song that we used at the end, that another world really is possible. In fact, it's on its way. How does that happen? It happens because we can see and we can hear and we can be led by the Holy Spirit to say, like, there is that possibility, and we are then working in cooperation with God and community to bring that about. And I think story has that kind of power. So that's my continued prayer, is that these are not just an archive of stories of things that have happened, but they're actually also simultaneously the seeds of what will be happening, and what will come and continue to grow.
Yeah, and there's something about like bringing those stories together too, right? That it's a way that we can, the stories aren't just for us to tell each other. The stories inspire us to look for new stories and to create more stories in the future.
Love it. I honestly, I'm so sorry. This is the end of the time. We've only had a short time. one of the things we're doing is doing something called sustaining conversations, where we kind of take things that were key forward. And I wonder if maybe we could connect about taking this conversation forward when we have more time and talking about stories, because I think there's something, really important for us to keep digging out. I'd really love to have more time with you all as well and share this out. So I'll be in contact. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording now.